Welcome to the grand departure of the 14th edition of the Ocean Race, live from Alicante, Spain. Today is the day. Our teams are about to start their 32,000-mile journey around the world, and it begins with leg one, a 1,900-mile smash out of the Mediterranean, and a chance for our skippers and their crew to unleash the boat's potential.
17 yachts from 7 nations are setting out on the world's longest ocean race. 7 months and 27,000 miles of hard sailing. With spinnakers now set, the fleets gradually separate. An unforgettable and unique adventure.
In this 14th edition of the Ocean Race, we have 5 IMOCAs battling it out for the Ocean Race trophy. To win it, they have to sail around the world for 6 months in 7 very different legs. Let's take a look at who our teams are.
For the first time, this edition of the Ocean Race features 5 international IMOCA crews competing in the toughest test of a team in sport. Leading the field is 11th Hour Racing Team, sailing under an American flag. First to enter, first to ready their boat. And unshakable in their confidence, they look set to dominate with a top-class crew of experienced sailors. Skipper Charlie Enright is back for his 3rd attempt at glory, and he boasts 3 previous winners of the Ocean Race among his team. On paper, 11th Hour Racing Team have everything needed to be victorious. Will it be their year? Team Holcim PRB is skippered by another sailor returning to the race, Kevin Escoffier. The Frenchman has competed twice before, winning the last edition on board Dongfeng Racing Team. He's no stranger to adventure, abandoning his sinking yacht in the Southern Ocean during the 2020 Vendée Globe. But since that close call, Escoffier has put in thousands of miles offshore, and he's backed up by a crew of tough and fast sailors with a lot to prove. With a background in engineering, Escoffier has the intellect and the winning experience to be a contender again this time. Hailing from Germany and always sailing with a smile is Boris Herrmann and Team Milizia. Their new IMOCA has turned heads with a design that caters for the wild conditions of the Southern Ocean. The crew list features a tight-knit international mix of rookies and experience, such as French navigator Nico Lundven, back for his 3rd go at the Ocean Race. Cheered on by their passionate fans, Team Milizia has set out to prove you can win and have fun. Giro Environment Team Europe won the Ocean Race Europe in 2021 on an old design with great crew work, skill and favourable weather conditions. Unable to rely on just their wits for the round-the-world race, they're back with a foiling boat with Vendée Globe pedigree. Skipper Benjamin Dutroux has proven himself in offshore sailing, and his team boasts Olympic pedigree. Experience in this race comes from Annie Lush and Tamara Echegoyen, who have lapped the world before. Biotherm's Paul Mayer is a proven IMOCA heavyweight. He won the Route de Rhum in 2018 and in 2021 was victorious in the Fastnets, the Defi Azimut, and finished as IMOCA champion. His boat stretches performance close to breaking point. While none of the team can boast experience in the Ocean Race, there's enough Vendée Globe, Olympic and foiling talent among the sailors to make this team an explosive combination. 5 elite teams, 7 challenging legs, 1 fascinating contest. The race is divided into 7 legs. It starts with a sprint from Alicante, Spain to Cabo Verde. From there, it's down to the southern tip of Africa, to Cape Town, which has been a regular host of the race. Next up is a record-breaking leg, the longest racing distance in the 50-year history of the race. 12,750 nautical miles, a 1-month marathon through the Southern Ocean from Cape Town to Itajaí, Brazil. This leg is worth double points, so it's crucial for teams to get it right. After the stop in Brazil, the boats head north across the equator and up to Newport on the east coast of the United States. The boats return to Europe on another double points leg with a transatlantic crossing to Aarhus, Denmark, followed by a flyby in Kiel, Germany, en route to The Hague in the Netherlands, and finally into the Mediterranean with the grand finale, this offshore leg to Geneva, Italy.
Our skippers, their boats, their teams, and of course the course. So to help us make sense of all that, we've got Sam Davies, a IMOCA sailor and former ocean race skipper. Sam, I mean, the course, okay, fine, we're going down to Cabo Verde, we're going around the world, but this first leg to Cabo Verde has got a little bit of a twist in its tail. It's just a pit stop.
Exactly, Niall. The sailors, in their heads, they're setting out for a leg that's about 5 days long, but the shore teams have had to prepare the boats to go into the Southern Ocean and compete for the first 2 legs because Cape Verde is just a pit stop. Nobody is allowed on the boats except the sailors who are doing that leg. So if they've forgotten something, it's too late. And if they need to repair something, it's the crew, the sailing crew themselves that have to repair with the tools and spares they've put on board here in Alicante. So it's been a pretty stressful time, I think, for the shore crew to prepare these boats, because otherwise you could say, oh yeah, we're off sailing in the trade winds. But no, these boats and teams, they have to get their heads around the fact that they're going into the Southern Ocean from here.
And does that mean that they're going to hold back a little bit on this leg to conserve the risk of breakages?
I think that's probably written somewhere in everyone's game plan, but I know these sailors, and I know that when they get out on the start line and they're going to be within sight of each other probably for the entire duration of this leg, it's impossible to hold back when you can see the others. They'll be foot to the floor no matter what the conditions.
Well, I'm sure that our skippers will probably, as you say, be forgetting all of that when we get out in the water, because it is looking to be an absolutely perfect conditions out here to get our IMOCAs absolutely ripping, and they will be chasing each other down mile by mile around the world. But the big question is, how does that convert itself into points? How do we decide who it is that's going to be lifting that Ocean Race Trophy? Let's take a look.
Just like in most other sports, the ocean race is won if you score more points than all of your competitors. But exactly how do you do this? In an offshore leg, the winning team is awarded points equal to the number of entries in the race. So, in this race, as there are 5 entries, the winning team will be awarded 5 points. Second place will be awarded 4 points, third place awarded 3 points, and so on. This year, double points will be awarded on the epic Southern Ocean Leg 3 and the Transatlantic Leg 5, which will raise the stakes even higher on these crucial legs. Penalties will of course be imposed for fouls and for breaking race rules. In the previous edition, the top 3 could not be separated until the final moments on the final leg. This year, who will cross the line in Geneva with the most points? That is still anyone's guess.
5 points to the winner of each leg, with of course some double point opportunities thrown in there as well. It's going to be a tough competition as the ocean race wraps 32,000 miles around the world. All the attention here in Alicante is, of course, on the offshore, but last weekend it saw the import race. And Sam, I mean, there's some things that we can pull out of that. I mean, it was a different type of race, but it was a good chance to see some skills on display.
Yeah, there are a lot of skills on display, lots of manoeuvring, and I think what I bring out of this is that Militia won the race, but there were so many place changes. The boats are so close. There's not one boat that has an advantage over the others.
And of course, well, as we can see, it did get light. Team Holston PRB at one point in the lead, but then that one tack really sort of cost them. You got to see how dangerous it was to make one slip up.
Oh yeah, and I think it's going to be like that for the whole of leg 1. And definitely in the Mediterranean. But yeah, we could see that all the boats had a strong point, all the boats had a great moment, yeah, for me it's just going to be so close.
And it was exciting, as you say, to see Team Militia come out on top. That's the big, heavy boat. There has been some questions about how they would perform in the light winds. It's tempting to draw too many conclusions, but for the moment, some good confidence building for Boris Herman and the team on board Team Militia. 1,900 miles of racing about to get underway here in Alicante, Spain, and all of it, mile by mile, is going to be hard fought by our 5 IMOCA skippers. So let's hear their predictions about how leg 1 is going to go.
So yeah, on the 15th we're gonna start from Alicante in Spain. The 2 or 3-4 days will be in the Mediterranean.
It has been a long journey, a lot of work. Very proud of what the whole Team PRB team have been able to achieve.
The hardest part will be the beginning.
It's gonna have a few challenges. You know, we need to get out of the Mediterranean, go through Gibraltar.
It's a short leg into the Atlantic Ocean, down to the Cape Verde Islands. And the Cape Verde Islands, they lie in a bed of reliable, strong winds, the northeast trades. I think very hard could be to be stuck in Gibraltar and see other boats sneaking through and there's no wind and the current is always against you. And if other boats get ahead, and they go out and catch the trades and you're still stuck.
We need to be careful because it's a coastal race. Our IMOCAs are not really built to sail in light wind. But it will be a very interesting leg.
Whoever reaches the trade winds first has a good chance of winning this leg.
It'll be an opportunity for everyone to stretch their legs, you know, to see what these boats can do and to see top-end boat speeds.
You know, you want to do well, you're going offshore, you never really know exactly what you're expecting. You know, race starts, will be still butterflies in the stomach.
We are 5 different IMOCA, and in IMOCA you can't take the same strategy because your boat is different than the others. Yeah, it's interesting because it's a race, you know, it's not maybe not the fastest boat will be first because it's a strategy. Racing is not only the speed.
And the finish in Cabo Verde is really tricky with the breeze funneling through the channels between the islands. You probably learn the most about the competition on leg 1. So it's an opportunity I think everybody's looking forward to.
So here we are, lucky enough to be down on the dock and really close to the 5 IMOCAs that are going to set off on leg 1 later on today. We know the weather now. All these IMOCAs are a little bit different, so I'm going to try and explain what those differences are going to mean in the race. Starting off with Team Holcim PRB, we've seen that she has a cockpit slightly differently set up to the other boats with 2 coffee grinders. I think they're going to be really strong in the manoeuvres, in the transitions and that first coastal part of leg 1. Potentially that could get them off to a head start ahead of the others. Then Team Militia. Militia is known to be maybe a slightly heavier boat in exchange for a bit more reliability and robustness. So they could struggle through the lighter stuff and transitions at the beginning of the leg, but maybe that reliability and tough boat will pay off for them. And then if I come round to 11th hour too, 11th hour is the team with the most practice. They know their boat better than the others probably. And this boat has been optimised a lot. We'll probably see them strong in all aspects of this first leg and potentially the boat that's going to be hard to beat. Then looking on to Biotherm, she's the last boat to be launched. The team are playing catch up a little bit. Are they going to be ready in time? But recently she's shown a lot of speed and performance in the light winds. That should help her through the transition zones and especially the first half of this leg. So let's see if that works for them. And finally, looking around to Giro Environment, which is the only older generation boat. Could that be a disadvantage? I know this boat struggles a little bit upwind, so the first half of the leg will be difficult for them. But she's a rocket ship downwind, and we're going to have some strong trade winds, and potentially they could catch up a disadvantage with that speed.
Well, all of our teams will be hoping that their boats are the fast one, and a lot of attention has been made on what's going to happen out in the water. But Natasha, I know you've been ducking in and out on the dock from the team bases and getting the gossip about these final preparations, which I'm gathering it just means carrying enough food to take them all the way to Cape Town.
Yes, that's right. Just like Sam was saying earlier, they have to take all of their gear and food for both legs all the way to Cape Town. And I heard that one team, the French team, had forgot saucisson, and for them this is very important because, you know, it really works those jaws because they eat this freeze-dried food, you know, for a long time. So they had to scramble to get somebody to bring that on a plane at the last minute. There's also a black market apparently for poop bags because they're hard to find and they're, you know, these very special kind of biodegradable bags. There's also been a lot of injuries on these electronic scooters that all the technical crew use to like zip around.
I mean, whatever happens here, they're going to have to step from the safety of the shore out onto the water. It's been adventurous here in Alicante, but I guess the real challenge is what's going to happen out in the waters here in Spain.
The ocean race is sailing like you've never seen before.
There is 0 boats left.
Around the world against the clock. One of the most extreme sports on the planet.
Help!
With the winds in the wind, just how do the ocean race sailors grab them? Winning is never easy, no matter the sport. But this isn't your typical sport. There's no closed course, no predictability, and no room for error. It's a relentless ocean marathon. So how do you win, other than a bit of luck?
Sometimes it's big decisions that are made before the race, and sometimes it's small decisions that are happening in the moment.
Teams must take into account a number of factors: boat design, wind speed and direction, currents, and ocean swell.
If you don't get the macro part of strategy right, none of the micro really matters.
And ultimately, the crew's physical and mental energy. With the unpredictability of the open ocean, a best guess or calculated risk can be where the race is won or lost.
There's a lot of research that happens even from the very beginning. It pops up the questions of, what would I do in this situation, versus having those all shiny and new when you're offshore.
I mean, there's so much that goes into it to even just give you an opportunity to get to a place where you can make some of these smaller decisions.
You can think that you know what you're going to get yourself into, but until you're really out there, you have no idea what it's going to be like.
The ocean race is won and lost in strategy.
The short gains and losses psychologically have a bigger impact. Yet, even if 3 days' time you're in the right position and that short gain, that's irrelevant because we've now made a big gain.
When you get strategy wrong, it hurts, just as it feels rewarding to get strategy correct.
Good job, nice work.
Plotting the quickest route is essential to winning, but the most direct routes aren't always the fastest. One day can be filled with swell, the height of a skyscraper. The next flat, calm, no wind. It's unpredictable.
Probably every leg at some point, you'll almost be pointing at opposite direction to where you're trying to finish, which is just crazy. It's like, hang on, but the finish line is over there and we're going this way. How does this make sense? Some people can handle it, some people are just like...
As a 6-month race, anything can and will happen when you're at the ocean's mercy. Watch closely and you'll soon see the choices the crews make in their search for a win.
What does leg one of the ocean race look like? Well, after some tight manoeuvring at the shoreline of Alicante, it is down past the southern edge of Spain and out through the Strait of Gibraltar before the crews arriving at Cabo Verde for, a well-deserved, if not quite short rest in Mindelo. What does it take to win the ocean race? We thought it would be a pretty good idea to find out. So Natasha sat down with race-winning skipper Ian Walker.
Ian, it must be great to be back and amongst the boats. Does this make you want to go back out and take the race on again?
Well, it's great to be back and looking forward to getting on board some of the boats later today. But no, I think I've done my share of ocean races for now. So yeah, I'll let the young guys do it.
You know what it takes to win it. What does it take to win this race?
If you're fast and you manage the risk well, then you're going to be in the hunt. And you know, we haven't seen these boats pushed hard with 4 sailors all the way around the world. So you've got to finish. I think it's going to be who can manage the risk the best. More importantly than the speed, I would say.
What advice would you give the skippers that are setting off?
I think for the skippers, just keep your team close. Work as a team. It's a long way. I think just kind of keep the boat together, let the race unfold, and then decide how much risk you need to take. If you've got the fastest boat, you don't need to take much risk. I always feel the first leg is the best leg of the ocean race. It has a bit of everything. You've got to sort of fiddle your way out of the Mediterranean. And then you've got to deal with the Canary Islands, and there's choices to be made there. Do you stay inside, through the middle, outside? The Cape Verde Islands will present its own challenges, particularly, I think, leaving, when you've got to deal with the downwind side of the islands. Then you've got an equator crossing, and then finally you get to spend a week kind of thrashing across the South Atlantic, which is a real test. You know, the first normally real downwind heavy air test. So it's a leg, you know, and in this case it's, I guess, two legs that really has everything. And traditionally the boat that is first to Cape Town very often goes on to win the race. It brings out the best in people, it brings out the best of the team, and it's as much how you deal with the challenges, how you overcome the obstacles, as maybe, you know, just about the sort of last few percentage of performance. It's a great race.
Well, it's quite the challenge, this race, and of course the attention has rightfully been on the seemingly endless miles that our crews are going to have to navigate around the world. But there's also quite a smaller, less acknowledged but significant moment, and it happened just a few moments ago here in Alicante. Sam, that moment where the teams have to leave the dock and set off on leg one, and some emotion on display.
Oh, for sure. The dock-off is an amazing moment. It's a moment I've got great memories of doing that here with Team Messier in Alicante in 2014. And I think it's special here because you're docking off for leg one, but you're docking off right now to sail around the planet, around the world. And so that brings a little bit of extra emotion. You've got the race in your head ahead of you, but you've also got to say goodbye to your friends and family and your team who've worked so hard to get you here. But there's one thing that's in your head. Is my boat ready? Have we got enough kit on board? Have we got everything? Is my crew happy? Are we ready to go? And what is going to happen to us in the next 5 days? What's the weather going to throw at us? Is something going to break? Are we going to have a drama to deal with? You have no idea what is going to happen, and that's part of the magic of that moment as well.
And is it easier if the family is here to wave you goodbye, or does that just make it a little bit tougher?
I think all the sailors are very different. I know some, I'm a bit like that, some like to say goodbye secretly a few days before to get that emotion over with and concentrate on the race. And I think a lot of them like to have the friends and family there. But I think one thing you'll see is sometimes you see their faces are a little bit already gone into the race, and those goodbyes, you can see it's a little bit different. They're thinking of what's coming up ahead of them.
And it really is quite a big moment. And of course, for our sailors, we talk about performance, we talk about the racing, but they are going out there against each other, but of course they are going out there against Mother Nature as well, and it is a pretty serious undertaking. But to turn our attention back to the racing, Natasha was down there on the dock to get the thoughts from the skippers and the sailors ahead of leg one.
Kevin, how important is a win for you today?
Each time, you know, even when it's not a race, it's important for me to win. But most important, you know, at the first leg, we are a crew, we haven't been sailing together for a long time. I think that since ocean race is very long, most important on this leg is to build the crew. It's to grow together, to learn how to sail together, and I'm pretty sure with the talented and experienced people we've got on board, if we manage to do that, we'll be ahead.
You're going to have really strong weather. What is your strategy going to be?
Yeah, in this very, very strong weather, I'm not so concerned about the foils. That is more the hulls tapping in the waves. The mast, we have all the same mast, so we need to look after the masts. But we want to go a bit to the north, to the Spanish coast, where we expect smaller waves, and sail along there. Also, we enjoy the view of the coastline, and I think that's our strategy.
Yeah, I think 48 hours of chaos, certainly, as it relates to transitions. A lot of tacks, a lot of maneuvers, a lot of wind. And then once we get outside, it's kind of one and in to Cabo Verde, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There are plenty of trade winds and Madeira wind shadows and you name it. So not going to be a lot of rest, but it's a quick leg, which means more time to rest when we get there, which is good.
Is your boat ready for the conditions that you're going to confront?
Yes, it will be quite hard. Huh? We're going to have a rock condition tomorrow probably, but I'm so happy to do the run with it because we had 40 knots upwind, so normally it's okay, but we have to take care. That's the first time we will sail together. The way is long to Genova, and we're going to preserve the boat.
How well does your boat go upwind?
Yeah, it's a lot of wind for the first leg. We are happy with that because the boat like wind, like us, like the team, so that's great. But it's the first leg of the ocean race. It's a big race. We work on it since a lot of months, and we need to do 6 months now with the boat in one piece. So yeah, it's a strong leg for sure. It will begin the hat on the wheels, but yes. It will be strong. We are a strong boat, but we need to be careful.
Excellent. Well, good luck.
Yes, thanks a lot. And see you in Cabo Verde.
Well, the countdown is nearly over. For some of our sailors, it has been months. For others, it has been years. But they are about to move to their new homes on the oceans. Over the next 6 months, they are going to spend more time afloat on our racetrack than they will do ashore. So it is no surprise to hear from their own mouths as to why protecting that round-the-world blue racetrack is so important and why we must all be a catalyst for change in the health of our oceans.
The ocean race is more than a race across the ocean. It is a race for the ocean. Along with 11th Hour Racing, the founding partner of the event's award-winning Racing with Purpose sustainability programme, we are taking action for a healthier ocean. And it starts with all of us individually taking an ocean view.
People say that you have a profound experience if you go up into space and look back down to Earth. You suddenly see the fragility of our blue planet floating in the dark emptiness, and you feel utterly compelled to do all you can to protect it. It's known as the overview effect.
And from the crew of Apollo 8, God bless all of you on the good Earth.
There's a similar, life-changing experience, but you can have it here on Earth. We call it the ocean view effect. It happens when you sail away from our terrestrial world and head out into the open ocean. When you find yourself hundreds of miles from land, in dark water many thousands of meters deep, and you take a moment to look all around. As you look out across the ocean, you see the natural fragility of our blue planet. But you also experience something else. The strength and power of the ocean that dominates and controls our world. You get to witness the source of life on our planet. It doesn't just send a shiver down your spine, it literally takes your breath away. You notice how the ocean controls the weather and the climate, and how it provides the essentials of life. You experience not just the true nature of our living planet, but the fragility of our own existence on it. It suddenly becomes crystal clear that the ocean can't be controlled or tamed. It's far too big and powerful. To survive and succeed, we must respect the ocean, understand it, and work with it. Whether you're on the open ocean or back on land, it really makes no difference. The ocean view effect has taught me that the ocean's vulnerability is inextricably linked to our own. What we do to the ocean, we do to ourselves. It's the source of life on Earth. We need to treat it that way.
11th Hour Racing Team isn't the only one taking up the cause of a healthy ocean. Every sailor has signed the race's sustainability charter, and every IMOCA team has a strong sustainability focus, from promoting circularity or reducing the impact of climate change to sustainable waste management. Over the next 6 months of the ocean race, we will check in to learn more about ocean rights, sustainable boat building and the Ocean Race Summits. And we will look at the onboard science programs as well as onshore education and learning initiatives as we race with purpose.
Welcome to Alicante, Spain for the grand departure, the start of the Round the World Challenge. 5 IMOCA offshore yachts powered by their teams will fight mile by mile in a quest to lift the trophy for the 14th edition of the Ocean Race. I'm Niall Mount Best, and today it's the start of leg 1, beginning from the shoreline of Alicante, where the race has been located since 2011, and now it hosts its 5th race start. Well, what is the course that's waiting our teams? Let's take a look. I was told this is pre-voice. Do you need me to talk? Seven legs and 32,000 miles, wrapping our way around the planet. So let's welcome in our IMOCA expert, Sam Davies, former ocean race skipper and round-the-world IMOCA sailor. I mean, the breeze today, Sam, looking pretty good.
Yeah, out on the water, I think there's about 12 to 14 knots. We're on the dock just now. It seemed a little bit more than that to me, and that's great wind for foiling.
Well, good breeze for foiling. Boats that are certainly made for it. The question is, what are the sailors who are going to be in control of these incredible machines? Let's take a little bit of a look and get to know them. First of all, 11th Hour Racing Team and skipper Charlie Enright back for his 3rd ocean race. Now, their campaign has been running since the last edition finished, and they're well prepared this time too. So it's no surprise that they go into today as firm favourites to gain an early lead and set the pace. Guyot Environment Team Europe and co-skippers Benjamin Detrue and Robert Stanjek are racing with a strong team, great passion, plenty of sailing skill. Now, they've got the oldest IMOCA of the fleet, and while the designs have evolved, theirs has a reputation as the most reliable. Expect this team's performance to build. Team Holcim PRB, skipper Kevin Escoffier, surrounded by big names in offshore sailing and veterans of the ocean race. During the import race last weekend, one mistake cost this team the lead, so tensions will be high on board as they hope to sail clean and keep any lead this time around. Paul Mayer is the skipper of Biotherm, and his crew is made up of typically solo IMOCA sailors. And this being a fully crewed race, they will need to share the space on board, gel together and find their coordination to punch out ahead of the early stages in this leg. Team Malizia and Boris Herman, their boat is bigger, heavier, and its weakness is expected to be in the light winds. However, in the last week, and in the import race, this team slipped through the fleet to win when the conditions fell away to almost drifting. Was it luck? Well, time will tell. And this is what we are racing for. 5 IMOCA teams, and one of them will get to lift the Ocean Race Trophy, keeping record of 50 years of victory and adventure. We'll have to wait 6 months and many miles before somebody gets to add their name to the list. Well, Sam, as we were talking before, the breeze is pretty good, and well, we're all getting a little bit excited here about potentially what we could see from these IMOCAs on this flat water but windy import section.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and well, I'm really excited as well. The IMOCAs are designed to sail around the world. We saw them in the import last week, where maybe that's not their strong point. So I'm looking forward to seeing them sailing around the world with a crew on board.
Five-minute countdown has started here, and the departure being held in fine style here in Alicante, with the military providing the starting signal on the starting boat. And as we go to the helicopter shot, we get a little bit of a chance now, Sam, to see that water and where the breeze is. It is coming off the shore, and that is going to provide a little bit of a challenge.
Definitely, Niall, and you can see that the water looks a bit stripy, and those stripes are where the breeze lines and the gusts are coming down. Obviously, there's quite a few mountains and hills up there on the shore, and that's going to make it really swirly and gusty and shifty. So, tricky race course to start with.
Well, just a moment ago, we were on board with Giro Environment Team Europe as the helicopter was just panning its way around the course. And look at those dark streaks coming down. We saw earlier on with the VO65s racing, as the 4-minute gunfires in the background, that the breeze was certainly quite streaky. We saw some big shifts. And just coming down now, I believe that's Abby Ehler on the bow now of Team Holcim PRB.
Yeah, and they've made the choice to have the code 0 or the J0 up. Their J2 is obviously fixed on the forestay and the IMOCAs, and they've already got their J3 up as a stay sail. So 3 sails up, ready to make that choice and to be able to make the quick changes between the sails. So they're talking about when to deploy the sail. So I'm doing a bit of translation here for you, Niall.
Well, it was interesting because I was actually lucky enough to step on board Team Holcim PRB, and they were talking about it then, whether it was going to be 10, 15 seconds, how long it was going to take to deploy this, the sail that we start seeing coming out now. And fascinating to me how those seconds in a round-the-world race counted for seemingly everything by the enthusiasm that they were talking about it.
It's so important for these crews to get ahead right from the start, and for the team morale, there's nothing better than to lead out of the import section of a leg start.
Now, you were kind enough to sort of guide me through some of the sail choices that we can see here on the IMOCAs. The sailors get to choose, but there's so much to talk about because we really do need to kind of point out that the IMOCA is high tech. Just give us a little bit of an overview here. We've got the foils. I know we're going to come to them, but as sailors, we do get quite a lot of choice as to how we power up these boats.
Yeah, you've got a different choice of sails. Obviously, there's the J0. You've got your J2, which is fixed. Your J3. They will have spinnakers on board, but we won't see them, I don't think, in this part today. Yeah, so there's a lot of choices, not necessarily the same sails on all 5 boats.
And that's going to be the challenge for them for the opening stages of leg 1 in the ocean race coming off the shores of Alicante. As Sam was saying, they've got some choice here with the sails, and we did see earlier on with the VO65 the masthead code 0s coming out, head sails coming out, jibs coming out, and then going back away again on board the IMOCAs. It's not quite as easy as we go on board now with Giro Environment Team Europe. Annie Lush on the pumps there with Robert Stanjek in the grey hat. That grimace from the helm. I love the way that every helm has a slightly different face that they pull when they're concentrating.
Well, I imagine the stress today. You know, they're helming, the skippers, they're starting their lap around the planet. And yeah, for sure, I'd be grimacing too.
Coming up to 1 minute to go now with 11th Hour Racing Team and Giro Environment Team Europe. There's the final minute signal. Team Militia coming in behind with power, opting to go above right now of Giro Environment Team Europe.
And it looks like we've got 3 sails on J0s and 3 boats on J0s and 2 boats on J2s. So again, a different sail choice through the fleet.
Good breeze coming in from the windward side of the course as let's just get a little bit of a cue as the action on board Team Militia. Rosalind Kuiper, Will Harris there on the pumps. The start line off to the right hand side of your picture. Final approach into the line. 11th Hour Racing Team having to put on the brakes and flog their sails a little bit too close with 10 seconds left to go on the clock. Behind them, Biotherm looks strong to windward, but the big question is, Giro Environment Team Europe, are they going to be given a little bit of space by Team Militia on the line? They are, but all 3 of those boats with Team Militia and Team Holcim PRB back from the line. It's Biotherm with the best start and racing right over the top of the Americans. 11th Hour Racing Team, no breeze to leeward.
Great start by Paul and his team on a Biotherm. You can see them just with a perfect trim there. The boat's just kissing the water. that's ideal. You don't really want to fly too high, and they've got up on the foils, reducing the wetted surface area. Great view there.
And it looks to be, by the angle that Biotherm are taking right now, they are not laying the first mark. They are sailing slightly to the left of the first mark. In fact, most of the fleet are following them. That could be a wind shift, or it might just be a decision as to get low and fast into better breeze.
Yeah, I wonder if they've seen that it's lighter up ahead, and so they're using that strong breeze to bear away, so that they've got room to power up and luff up to sail into that lower mark. But it's difficult to see from here, Niall.
Well, one thing that we can pretty clearly see is the risk of starting at that pin end of the line. That's where 11th Hour Racing Team were. They didn't come off the line with pace, and they got rolled almost straight away by Biotherm, and then they got getting rolled right now by Team Holcim PRB. That's why you can see the bow up on Biotherm starting to foil away. Team Holcim PRB certainly getting that leeward foil to kick in. To windward, Guyot Environment Team Europe and Team Milizia firing, but 11th Hour Racing Team, you can see them in the wake of first place Biotherm right now.
So you can see them there when they do those wheelies, as we call them. It looks like they've probably just got too much rake on the foil, and once the boat's up and foiling, you can't change the rake. You have to reduce speed to be able to move the foils, so they're going to have to deal with that setting until they get to the next mark, and sometimes you end up doing a bit of a wheelie and coming off the foil and crashing down, just as Holcim PRB are showing us in the right hand edge of the picture now. There they go, crashing off the foil.
Team Holcim PRB, I mean, the speed that they're pulling out at the moment is just a shade under 25 knots. Now it's Biotherm's turn to lift that bow up. It looks fantastic, but it's not very fast. As you're saying there, Sam, it's actually grinding in that transom. It's kind of too much from the foils. They need to smooth out that ride, but at this pace, at least, they are hurtling towards that first mark. It's going to be a left-hand turn, and now we can see Biotherm turning up. So they are going to be able to lay this first mark. That low course was just about chasing the breeze as we go on board with Biotherm and just watch the OBR, the onboard reporter, trying to hang on for the ride.
Not sure if we're getting any sound from them, but yeah, it's yeah, they're just so you can hear Paul, he's calling the trim, so he's on the helm and he's got the crew inside the cockpit. He can feel his boat really well, so he's trimming basically from the helm, and they're doing what he's asking for.
Biotherm out in the lead at the moment, and they seem to be the only boat that is able to sail what I would describe as a clean course. They can choose their best angle to the breeze. Behind them, the rest of the pack is having to fight, or at least being influenced by the boats around them. This is the only boat with Paul Mayer on the skipper. They are the only boat right now that have got their pick of the breeze, and Biotherm putting out some fantastic pace here in Alicante to lead at the moment for the start of leg one. Biotherm out in the lead, Team Holcim PRB with that green hull now being affected by Team Milizia. What Team Holcim PRB were doing to 11th Hour Racing Team, Team Milizia are doing to them, and Guyot Environment Team Europe, they haven't really got that masthead code 0 working as we go on board the German and French team.
Little more main bend.
Meanwhile, at the front of the course, Biotherm round with breeze. They are hurtling away at about 23 knots. I actually expect them to go a little bit slower on this next downwind section, but look at the battle for second, third, fourth, and maybe fifth as well, with Team Holcim PRB just maybe half a boat length in the lead compared with Team Milizia. All these boats starting to go now, with Guyot Environment Team Europe facing a little bit of a choice here. Do they go to windward of Boris Herman ahead, or do they try and get on the inside? Biotherm moving out a picture on the left-hand side, safely in the lead. Team Holcim PRB, Kevin Escoffier now round in second place. Does Team Milizia try to attack second place, or is Boris Herman going to have to defend? Guyot Environment Team Europe tries to take the inside, and they are going to potentially be able to dictate when these two boats jibe now.
Yeah, no, I can see that there's again the choice of when do we get the new foil out, and it looks like they've all got the women foil out except Militia. So the guys on Militia have got one extra set of winching to do to get their new foil out, and obviously with only 3 people in the cockpit, there's a lot to do on this really short downwind leg before the jibe.
Now that is a big sail that 11th Hour Racing team have unfurled at the moment that they're hoping to use on this downwind leg. This is not really on anybody's playbook to see all these IMOCAs ahead of the Americans. Charlie Enright, the skipper of 11th Hour Racing team, will be disappointed about how that split-second decision just to be slightly too close to the line, how that has all played out as we are back on board now with Biotherm. And the boat's a little bit slower. I mean, still nicely over 12, 13 knots. A little bit slower on this downwind leg.
Yeah, it's a little bit slower for Paul and his team because they chose not to use their code sail, which is still down on the deck. So they've got to struggle on this short downwind leg with a small J2, and they've obviously judged that 2 extra manoeuvres are just too much and too risky. They want to just keep it clean and simple.
An important jibe coming up here for the boats as we make our way towards Mark II. Whoever can put the right jibe in on the right ley line, pick the breeze, they're going to be in a very strong position going on to the next leg. Little bit light now for the leaders. There is still plenty of pressure, but we don't expect the IMOCAs to be really ripping at this angle to the breeze. And as you were saying, Sam, they've decided to make things a little easier for themselves in terms of sail choice.
Yeah, I think it looks easy from where we're sitting, Niall, but believe me, these courses are just really short. When you only have 3 people on the handles and in the pit managing all that.
I'm having flashbacks now to the import race. Just listen to how hard they're having to work.
Yeah, easy. Ease more. Come up. Yep. And then just going to no backstay, but yeah. 3, 2, 1.
Sam Goodchild down below on Team Holcim PRB, and I know we haven't been watching him the entire time, but it almost feels like he's been grinding since the start line.
Yeah, so what he was doing, because obviously they've just rolled their J0, their masthead sail, they're changing to the J2, which is a fractional sail, which means you have to hook the backstay onto the lower setting so that it's supporting the J2 part of the rig. So just another thing that they've got to do, as well as the foils and the sails, they've got to get the rig setting right as well before they put any load on the boat on the next reaching leg.
4 of our IMOCAs making our way down to the next turn, Mark II, a left-hand turn where we then expect the speeds to come up. Interesting to see Guyot Environment Team Europe just not quite managing to hold that inside line on Team Militia, as we are now back with the race leaders Biotherm safely round. They didn't make any sail changes on this downwind leg, so potentially a little bit of energy conserved. Now they're onto a nice drag race and potentially back into the breeze.
Yeah, they should extend from here.
Well, just looking at their speed ticking up, it was around 9 knots as they came down that bottom mark. Now it's up to 14, it's climbing towards 15 pretty rapidly. The foils really starting to kick in at this point. We did see Biotherm and Team Holcim PRB firmly up on the foils, but it wasn't steady flight. That bow lifting up, that's much better though. They've certainly been able to get the rake set a little bit better now for this drag race. Can Team Holcim PRB do the same? That's a lot of heel right now for that turn.
Yeah, it looks like maybe they've got a little, not quite enough rake for just to accelerate, but that's the problem. You need righting moment to accelerate, but as soon as you accelerate, you want to have less rake so that you can go fast and not do one of those wheelies.
Well, look at this from 11th Hour Racing Team. They have sailed an absolutely incredibly strong downwind section. Team Militia hoping to get back the position that they lost to Charlie Enright and the American boat, hoping to get on that inside. The next leg here is going to be a drag race, and I'm sure there is going to be no room past any of the boats ahead to leeward. And Look at the acceleration come on for 11th Hour Racing Team now that they've got everything set up and pulling. Team Milizia are going to have to start worrying about Guyot Environment Team Europe, who look happy to take that leeward position.
Yeah, it's always a scary moment. I'm looking at Guyot's furl. 11th Hour don't look like they've got a great furl either, and it's obviously a bit stressful if you don't do a good furl. Is your sail going to open up on that next leg?
Well, Alicante, home to the ocean race since 2011, and this being their 5th race start, certainly do put on a show here for the sailors and the fans alike. It has been quite the 2 weeks since the boats have arrived here and been put on display, and now for this grand departure and the start of leg 1, we get a little aerial display as well, flying in over the city and over the race course as well. Well, on this drag race, Guyot Environment Team Europe, and I mean, I said that there was really no room through to leeward, but Guyot Environment Team Europe seemed to have made it work.
I'm not sure. I don't know. It's hard to see from here, but yeah, I don't think they had much choice, and they've obviously had to bear away and try and find a lane through to leeward.
19 knots at the moment with Paul Meyer and Biotherm. The boat certainly had a reputation for being fast, and just at that point where you get the keel and the leeward foil just working together, the boat lifting up and the drag reduced to just a bare minimum as the boat starts to fly. This is how the fleet has stretched themselves out, with its Team Milizia now in last place, Guyot Environment Team Europe in 4th, 11th Hour Racing Team in 3rd, Team Holcim PRB in 2nd place, and stretching ahead at times 24, 25 knots. Paul Meyer and the crew on board Biotherm.
So we can see great shots there from the Biotherm up on the keel and the foil. So the keel being it's canted, it actually creates lift as well. So the more you cant the keel, the more you've got lift coming off from both sides of your boat, basically. So the boat's being lifted up by the 2 sides. The windward foil's out still deployed, and Paul is getting drenched by the wave that's getting flicked off that windward foil. Great noises of the sheets being eased off the winches as they do a nice wheelie in front of us.
Really bearing away here. I mean, there's a huge change in direction for Biotherm. I mean, they are on a good course to the mark at the moment. They're certainly sailing with a more sensible sail in terms of manoeuvrability and options, but that foil is really coming into its own. It is flat water here in Alicante. These are the conditions that we were expecting these boats to get up and get happy. But look at this, in the background, right at the back, Guyot Environment Team Europe, they've got problems with their masthead Code Zero.
Yeah, as I was saying, did look that furl did look worrying, and sadly for them, the sail has deployed at the top, and that's going to do a big knot. It's going to be really hard to get rid of that. They're going to have to stay dead downwind until they can sort that out, because if they luff up and carry on towards the mark, they're only going to make that worse, and they're probably going to have to drop that and then unknot it later on tonight.
They are still moving, but they are making no progress along the course. They've had to turn 90 degrees to the direction that they should be travelling, going dead downwind now. And as you were saying, Sam, it does look like they are getting set to drop. Although, is it just coming out here? We're just losing the shot of the furl. If you are a Guyot Environment Team Europe fan, you will be hoping that this is going their way and they've been able to unfurl that twist in the middle, but it looks ugly as the camera pans down. They're close to be able to getting out, but, well, I guess the question is how long, how much time do you waste trying to do this rather than just saying, okay, let's drop it and let's do it properly?
Yeah, but just dropping it, Niall, when there's only 3 of them on board, it's pretty risky. It looks like they've managed to get it unfurled, and they take their time to furl it properly before they luff up.
Guyot Environment Team Europe, their masthead Code Zero now is under control, but you can see the distance that they have lost to Team Milizia in 4th place. A boat themselves are a little bit behind 11th Hour Racing Team, but this is the boat right now that is setting the pace. Paul Meyer and Biotherm. This is the newest IMOCA out of R5. It had some problems when it was just after it was launched at the Defi Azimuth structurally, but all well prepared, and right now the boat seems to be performing and they seem to be getting the best out of the foils. But 11th Hour Racing Team, they are continuing their push through the fleet here as we go on board now with Charlie Enright and the American team. Simon Fisher on the right-hand side, looking round, and they're probing for weaknesses here. Kevin Escoffier with Team Holcim PRB just in front. Another very fast IMOCA, another very experienced racer, and that is why you can see Team Holcim PRB holding to the right and turning up what almost looks to be quite late because they want to exit close to this mark. 11th Hour Racing Team doesn't want to get locked to leeward. They are now following that turn as well, but I mean, from that start, I did not expect to see Charlie Enright back to third at this point.
Yeah, he's done a really good reaching leg, and obviously managed to get a nice lane, a clear air, and I think they've tidied up that furl, so that wasn't an issue for them. And maybe we are seeing a bit of their experience in knowing how to trim their sails and foils perfectly for the wind angle on that leg, whereas maybe the others are still finding how to trim and taking a bit more time to get the boat up to 100%.
Paul Meyer and Biotherm in the lead. The short upwind leg just giving our crews a little bit of a respite, a little bit of a slow down, or maybe just for us, because inside those cockpits, on the handles of the pedestals, will be the crew working hard. All those big gusts coming in, the main sheet, the Traveller, everything will need to be adjusted to try and keep this boat balanced and sailing as the conditions change. And look at the difference in angle here with Biotherm on that gust, lifting them right up. Team Holcim PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team off to the left-hand side of picture, holding that lower course there as Biotherm continues to point higher.
Yeah, I think the wind is so shifty and gusty, and obviously they're trying to find an average trim setting, because with only one grinder, you can't adjust all the sails for every gust in these conditions. You've got to find an average setting, and then the helmsman will steer around it.
Shifty, difficult conditions here in Alicante. The water is flat, and that is one thing going in your favour, but the change from what seems to be maybe 12 knots of wind to 20 knots of wind, causing an awful lot of work and some calories to be burnt by the crew, as Biotherm in first place, tacking over right now with that J2, a much easier manoeuvre than what we've seen with those furling head sails. Paul Meyer now lining the boat up to round Mark 4, the last of the rounding marks for this import section of leg 1.
So he'll be hoping he's got a good ley line, and obviously that was I think Damien up, or Anthony up on the bow, just flicking the skirt of that big J2. You can see they've really optimized the sail size. They've got two vertical battens on the foot of that J2, and obviously they were a little bit caught up on the lifeline, so just flicking that over.
Well, it's been an interesting race course with a lot of different breeze out there, but probably the best view in the house is from the helicopter, and up there we have got long-time American offshore sailor Jesse Fielding. Let's check in with him to see what he makes of the racing so far.
From 250 feet up here, it's the best view in the house. Plenty of breeze rolling down the course. More to come. It's going to be an absolute drag race back through the start line and out to the islands for the last mark before sunset. Weather's come good. Boats are sailing fast. Leeches look good. Foils look better. And they're launched.
Oh, Sam, I mean, I think trying to keep up with this fleet at the moment from the helicopter is probably the easiest way, because the speeds are going up and down the entire time. This should be a slower section of this import racetrack, but we're still seeing 11, perhaps 12 knots of boat speeds in the flat water here in Alicante, as we get almost a little chance just to peer inside the cockpit of Paul Meyer's boat Biotherm, but they've set themselves up nicely here with Team Holcim, PRB, 11th Hour Racing Team, and then Team Milizia behind. Biotherm, by this part of the import section of leg one here, opportunities to overtake are starting to run out for the rest of the teams, and Biotherm looking strong.
Yeah, they're looking strong, and it's looking like that keep it simple option has paid off, along with just a fantastic start by Paul and his team, which obviously helps a lot. You can see that they have kept all the options. They've got 2 furling sails ready, plugged in and ready to go on the bowsprit, so they've obviously got a J0 and probably a fractional as well. So, you know, potentially between this next mark and the islands, they might have to do a sail change.
.28 knots of boat speed for the race leader at the moment, Biotherm, as they rip their way around Mark IV back onto that reaching course. They've got to go through the start line, out through the leaving gate, and then they are off to the open part of the Mediterranean where some big breeze is waiting for them.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now. Paul's standing there, but I'm wondering if pretty quickly once they get reaching, he's going to put the pilot on. You can see he's stepping out. I'm not sure if they're already under autopilot. Obviously these IMOCAs are going to be most of the time sailing around the world with the autopilot driving them. They are amazing pilots now, and the crew trimming. So when you're on a reaching leg, you're almost faster if you can get that pilot driving the boat.
Yes. Okay, I see the 25. Tu passes la ligne et ensuite il y a la marque 1 et 2. Donc 1 et c'est 180.
On board with Team Holcim PRB, and doing a little bit of an unofficial competition here as the boats rip their way round Mark IV, the last of those left-hand turning marks, and as 11th Hour Racing come round, they're peaking at around about 20 knots, so it's still Biotherm having the best turn with 25 knots in their turn as we go on board now with the Americans.
Get the trim good first before we pull the board up. Yeah, copy that. Dave's coming on. I got the Camino, no problem. Okay.
Marie Ross, the onboard reporter for 11th Hour Racing Team on the bow, and the voice you can hear in the background there, just calling those instructions, was Francesca Klapcic. On the trim, as Simon Fisher, the navigator, he's having to work pretty hard. I mean, in the old days, the navigator would just sit there.
Everyone does everything on these boats. Obviously, with only 4 crew members, once you're offshore, you're going to be 2 on, 2 off probably. So when there's only 2 people on deck, you need to be able to do everything and be good at doing everything.
Next to come round, Mark IV, is Team Milizia, and we get a sense now of how this fleet has stretched round. It feels like a long time ago that Biotherm Racing came round Mark IV to start that final stretch to the leaving gate. Now, Boris Herman and crew bearing away with a nice bit of room to spare to let the boat build up those enormous curved foils. Just waiting to come into action now as the boat speed kicks in as we go on board. Rosalind Kuiper and Will Harris down below, working the winches.
And Rosalind's calling 100-degree true wind angle. That's probably the fastest angle for the boat speed for these IMOCAs.
The ropes there, the little cords that Will Harris was just adjusting on that pedestal, engaging different winches. That one pedestal can be used in so many different ways as we just check in now with the way that this racetrack has laid out our teams. The top 3, 11th Hour Racing Team in 3rd, Team Holcim PRB in 2nd place, and realistically Kevin Escoffier on board Holcim PRB is the only boat that's close enough to put any pressure with Biotherm, and the speed on Biotherm, it's not quite what we saw before.
No, it looks like they're slowing down. 12 knots, they're coming off the foils. Looks like maybe they're in a bit of a lighter spot, or is the wind shifting there?
So far, their course has been consistent. They have put the bow down a little bit from what you can see in the background with 11th Hour Racing Team and Team Milizia as well, but That might just be a small bubble, as now we start to see a little bit of heel, a little bit of power, and it's so quick that these boats, once the breeze comes on and the speed comes back as well, as we go on board now with Biothem.
So yeah, it looks like they've been lifted quite a lot, and so Paul was calling to see if they can reduce the foil rake, to reduce the drag, to try and keep the boat speed up as much as they can, and to sail as low as they can without slowing down too much.
And that's all to do with the change in that wind angle. When that wind angle turns one way and kind of lifts you up closer to where you want to go, when it turns the other way and it heads you further away from where you want to go. Right now for Biotherm, that's a lift. There, the bow went up. They want to start pointing tighter to the wind, and they've been able to do that. That's a better course. And just to windward of them, Team Holcim PRB doesn't seem to have suffered that same slowdown, that same bubble in the breeze. And certainly at the moment, the water looking dark. White caps out there as Paul Mayer at the back, still with that long tiller extension in hand, looking round, scanning to try and find the best breeze and stay in it. And Sam, just worth pointing out at this point, I know manoeuvres have been challenging. We haven't seen that windward rudder lifted up.
No, I think that's just one thing too many to do, and just like they've been sailing around, of course, with both foils out. If you lift the rudder and then if you forget or you don't have enough time to get the rudder down before the jibe or before the tack, it's not worth lifting the rudder for the little tiny boat speed gain that you might have. So we'll probably see the rudders coming up once they're out past this final gate, and getting a little bit more set up for an offshore leg.
Biotherm pushing hard in the breeze, but that heel that they're experiencing now is not fast. That just goes to show how rapidly the breeze can come up, and those seconds that are lost as the sailors try to adjust the boat to find that point of better balance. Team Holcim PRB behind has arguably done a slightly better job, but so far for Paul Mayer in the lead, still with him on board Biotherm. Just looking from the back of the fleet at the moment, Team Militia, a good opportunity to see just how, I mean, I want to say chunky, and that doesn't sound complimentary, but the structure on board Team Holcim and the way that coach roof look, it is quite stiff, it is quite strong, and being down below, this is pretty much the only boat that you can actually stand up without banging your head.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go inside just earlier today, and it's strange. I've never been in a boat like it, but I think once you're offshore, and especially offshore with a crew on board, that's going to be quite comfortable. And is that going to help keep the crew a little bit fresher, a little bit more well rested, and could that be an advantage?
Our 5 IMOCAs are, well, some of them at least, through that leaving gate for the import section of this course for leg 1. Then we are heading down to Tabarca, the island just to the south of Alicante. 2 marks we have to leave on the right-hand side, the starboard mark, before then heading out, where realistically the navigators start to take over and the decisions can be pretty varied indeed. Biotherm making great use of the conditions there, really starting to pull away. And you can see from that helicopter shot the darker patches, the streaks of the breeze coming in from the left-hand side of your picture, sweeping over to the right. All of that causing adjustments that need to be made constantly. I mean, they are starting to really find some speed here, Sam. In Biotherm out in the lead at the moment, I'm seeing 29 knots of boat speed at time on board Paul Mayer's boat.
Yeah, 30.
I know you have done plenty of sailing on the IMOCA. Is it scary? Because my God, it sounds scary to me.
Just to start with, but you get used to the speed pretty quickly. Obviously, with the speed comes the movement, and right now the sea state is flat because the wind's coming off the shore, so you don't have those issues of those kind of stop-starts as the boat crashes through the waves. But you can see Ming, their cameraman's having a little bit of trouble to get a steady image. They're going pretty fast.
Well, some smiles on board. But Paul Mayer's too busy to drink.
Yeah. I think he's drinking the seawater that's getting flicked off the foil. He looks pretty drenched. But I don't think he needs to drink as much as the crew members in the cockpit, because they're the ones that have been grinding for the last 45 minutes around this race course.
Look at the extra boat lengths that Paul Meyer and Biotherm have been able to pull out over Team Holston PRB. It's looking better and better now for Paul Meyer in first place. They look happy, and they should be happy as well. They are really flying at the moment. One of the crew members getting wet, everybody else a little bit of a chance just to take a breath and take a little bit of water. Biotherm stretching out in the lead and really tearing up the conditions here in Alicante as leg one underway into some fantastic breeze in southern Spain.
That looks like such fun sailing. They've got just a perfect true wind angle. You couldn't wish for more. I think if you're one of the crew members on board, will just be loving this. It's amazing, and I'm pretty jealous right now. But yeah, I think as they go further offshore, they're getting further away from the land, and so the wind is going to get a little bit steadier as they go away. So the boat speeds will be slightly less stop and start, and that will help both maybe move away and gain a little bit of an advantage. It looks like there's a bit of an obstacle course going on right now around those ships.
Team Holston PRB at the moment in second place. Kevin Escoffier trying to match the speed of Biotherm out in first place. But let's go to the helicopter at the moment, and let's get a view from the sky with Jesse Fielding up there and watching all the action.
Holcim is down below, absolutely ripping. Sails look very twisty from up here. Foils set impeccably, and the leaders are rumbling into bigger breeze. There's much larger patch of wind coming from the land, and it's hitting these front boats first, and so it's a case of the rich getting richer. But man, is it impressive to watch these boats from the air. Twisty setups, foils set perfectly. You can see them to leeward from the sky, doing their best work, and really propelling these boats forward at what is a pretty amazing speed. It's some Top Gun jet fighter stuff up here, that's for sure. And Biotherm's had a spectacular race thus far, and they've only extended with more to come.
Well, the best view of the house with Jesse Fielding up in the helicopter, and of course now that we're out from that import section, the spectators also moving through the fleet as well. And just a moment ago you could see out of camera it was Team Malizia doing a big cartwheel, and as we go with 11th Hour Racing Team, they seem like the only boat that just doesn't really have their boat moving at the moment.
I think that's on purpose, Niall. Obviously, they've decided that they don't need that J0, and that sail up in the air is creating drag, especially at 30 knots. Imagine all that surface area at 30 knots. It's slowing the boat down, so they've decided to slow down temporarily, get that sail down on the deck, out of the air, and then once the crew members are safely back in the cockpit, they'll put the foot back down on the accelerator, and I think they'll be going fast again.
Emery Ross on the bow at the moment of 11th Hour Racing Team, and he's not a sailor. He is not there to tune those sails. What he is doing is he's providing the eyes for perhaps Charlie Enright on the tiller, just to guide these boats through the fleet. It's getting a little bit tight and certainly very fast here in Alicante as our 5 IMOCA teams continue to push out into the Mediterranean in fantastic conditions. Hey Sam, the view from on board of these IMOCAs is a little bit challenging. I know you've got forward-facing cameras from the mast, the Oscar system and stuff like that, but sometimes the old-fashioned systems are the best. Send somebody up to the front.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're going that fast, obstacles come up really quickly, and that's one of the dangers of this new high-speed racing. And yeah, the Oscar, the radar, we've got alarms on all of those, and so we've got heads out the boat, and you've probably got the alarms on as well.
But Team Milizia Tuluid at the moment of 11th Hour Racing Team, their speed is down. We saw them maybe a moment ago, maybe a minute ago, bows up doing an enormous cartwheel. Their speed right now is a shade under 14 knots, whereas to windward 34 knots with 11th Hour Racing Team. I think by my record that's the biggest that we've seen. Biotherm was certainly up there at the 31, 32. Let's go on board with Team Milizia and get an update.
We can reduce the foil rate as well. I don't know.
No, it's not too clear what exactly the problem is right now. It might just be that they've just tripped off the foil. They're not happy with the rake. Certainly Will Harris talking about changing their rake there, but Sam, they're not happy.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the problem is. But yeah, it doesn't look like they're up to normal speed, so they're obviously dealing with some issue right now.
I know that Team Milizia had a problem with their foil system on the Route de Rhum. It's not, you know, it's not uncommon to have a little bit of a problem. It would be a real setback to have it in the opening stages of leg one, but it's probably worth at this point pointing out that those foils were not the foils that were inside this boat a week ago, or maybe less. This is a new change.
No, they're new foils. I know them quite well. They're sister ship, identical foils to the ones I have on Initiative Car, and they're good foils. But the issues that Milizia have had is having to change them so late, adjust the cases and the bearing systems, and obviously they haven't really had time to do a full shakedown of this new system, and I guess that's probably going to be something that they'll be a little bit stressed about.
Seems, for the moment at least, the Team Milizia has been able to vanquish their demons. They are up now at around 23 knots, which is what we would expect for this breeze. So perhaps just a moment where they needed to kind of reset and rebalance the boat. They're up to speed now. As you can see, Alicante retreating fast on the horizon. There is one boat still behind Team Milizia. That's Guyot Environment Team Europe, with that problem with the furl on the masthead Code Zero, putting them in last place with some distance to chase up. They've got miles to do it, but you can see there we go. There's Guyot Environment Team Europe. They are back up to speed now, and they are ripping. And I'm sure with the sailors that they have on board this boat, Sam, I mean, there's a lot of miles left to go, and they could get right back into this.
Exactly. It's always frustrating to be last out, to have issues, but realistically there's no distance between these 5 boats just yet, and there's a lot of obstacles in meteorological terms to come across between now and Gibraltar Strait, so it's not a problem for them, and maybe they'll just be fired up to work hard and catch up as soon as they can. Interesting to see they're running that big Code Zero, and maybe they're sailing a slightly lower angle, or we've had a lift on the race course, so they're obviously trying something a bit different.
Guyot Environment Team Europe back up to speed and trying to chase everybody down. Certainly at the moment their speed just a shade under 20 knots, but 8 kilometers is the distance between Guyot Environment Team Europe in 5th and Biofirm in 1st place. Goes to show with the speed of these high-tech IMOCAs just how quickly those leads can stretch into something that in normal sailboat racing would be pretty unsurmountable.
That's the frustrating part of when you have an issue and you've got to slow down. When the other boats are doing 30 knots, 10 minutes will make you lose about 5 miles.
Well, we have had, 40 minutes of racing here in Alicante, and we are seeing an incredible stretch across our 5 teams. Biotherm and Paul Mayer in the lead at the moment. They were doing 31, 32 knots. At the moment, down to, almost seemingly a sedate 18 knots of boat speed. Team Holston PRB and Kevin Escoffier in 2nd place. 11th Hour Racing Team in 3rd, and Team Milizia in 4th, with Guyot Environment Team Europe in 5th place. The speeds at the moment, I mean, you could see how there's clearly some sort of acceleration towards the back of the course. These front runners have sailed through it because Guyot Environment Team Europe have got the best speed at the moment. 11th Hour Racing Team and Team Milizia, they are close for third and fourth, and their speed's a little bit more down. But for fans of Boris Herrmann, be pleased to see him up to speed as we go back with Team Holcim PRB and Kevin Escoffier enjoying the conditions. Let's check in once again with Jesse Fielding, long-time American offshore sailor, to get the view from above.
Both of these leaders are absolutely gunning for it. Holcim definitely trying to chase down Biotherm here. It looks like the lower road, the lower lane, aka farther offshore, has better pressure. It's more mixed and solid, and these two lead boats are benefiting from that greatly. Biotherm, the lowest boat, if you will, the farthest offshore, going better.
Seeing that lured foil just ripping through the water and knowing that the loads and the weight, the force going through that carefully designed piece of carbon, I mean, it's quite something.
Yeah, it's quite something, but they look very fragile because they're thin, very pointy. But actually, yeah, these foils are designed to lift pretty much the entire weight of the boat out of the water. So that's almost, 7 or 8 tons that the foils can take easily. Yeah, it's an impressive piece of equipment, and also knowing that we can move them. So they've got a system inside the boat with hydraulics that you can use to move the upper foil bearing to be able to rake the foil, which gives you more or less angle of attack and more or less push from the foils. So you've got 5 degrees of freedom of movement to be able to change that power that the foil is giving you. But sometimes it's a bit tricky to make it work when it's under load.
It's interesting to see as the helicopter just zooms in there on the top of the rig, what looks to be quite a smooth ride. You can see the top of the rig from Team Holcim PRB bashing around. A little bit of movement at deck level, a lot of movement by the time you get to the top of the main.
Exactly, and we never understand how the wind instruments actually manage to hang on up there. And to be honest, I think it's not very often that we finish a transatlantic race with both wind instruments still up there working 100%. So we've all got spare wind instruments that we can put up on the push pit, because obviously they just get a nailing up there on the top of the rig.
As the fleet makes their way down south of Alicante, we expect the sea state to build and build more over the next 24, 48 hours with the wind that's really going to turn against them as they try and make their way through the Strait of Gibraltar. So now my mind turns to the bow on board Team Milizia, because Boris Herrmann and the designer of this boat has really decided that that's where attention needs to be. Buoyancy forward.
Yeah, so this is one of the, I guess, where the IMOCAs are tending towards that scow bow. So you've got a much more volume in the bow, and also the that sort of spatula, a bit like a free ride ski shape, which has been designed to try and keep the bow out of the waves. So whereas previously we had pointy bows so we could pierce through the water, the idea is to now just to ride over the top of the waves and not stuff the bow into them, and so the IMOCAs are trending more and more towards this kind of design. This is a VPLP design and not a Boris Herrmann design, but yeah, obviously Boris had a lot of say in how his boat was designed.
Just seeing that rig flex and the furled code 0 up from the end of the bowsprit to the top of the mast, just shaking around, and then the forestay of the J2 also sort of flexing. I'm wondering, is that runner tension, main sheet tension, or is that just the bounce just reverberating through the rig?
That's just the bounce, and that just shows the pure violence of what it's like to sail these boats, and so everything on the boat is designed to withstand that shaking, and yeah, there's a lot of fatigue that you're going to see in all the pieces and everything. Yeah, the engineers they've worked really hard to design everything to withstand all those movements. And obviously, yeah, you can't, when you're single-handed or short-handed, you can't just drop the J0 whenever you can, a bit like we see in the 65s. So they've got to be able to resist all the tough stuff that we throw at them by sailing these boats short-handed.
Back with the race leaders, Biotherm. Paul Mayer, head at the back of the boat, just poking up over the cockpit. Interesting to see that he has what certainly seems to be still on the helm. You've got the extra pair of hands now that these IMOCAs are fully crewed, so they haven't elected to engage the autopilot. It's a great piece of equipment, but it does have its limits. Look at the breeze as we pan round there. There's more wind coming down here. We saw 33 knots out of Biotherm. We saw 35 out of 11th Hour Racing Team earlier on this reaching stretch down to Tabarca. With that extra breeze coming down here, we could still see some extra pressure. At the moment, this boat, Biotherm, and the ones behind are sailing high of the mark. And this is pretty standard in terms of navigation here. They know there's more wind coming.
They know there's more wind coming, and they're obviously just trying to keep the boat moving. So I think the winds, they're quite sailing quite broad to the wind. The sails are eased a lot. If they bear away much more, then they're really going to slow down. So that's why Paul's still on the helm, because he's going to be reacting to every single change in the wind. And the autopilot, obviously there are limits, and the autopilot can't see what's coming and can't feel the boat quite like Paul can.
Just interesting, while we've got that shot of Biotherm, to note that the windward rudder on Biotherm is still down, whereas earlier when we were with Team Holcim PRB, the windward rudder was up. I love drawing conclusions that are too dangerous to make, but I wonder whether Biotherm thinks that there is the potential that they will be jibing to get down to Tabarca, and by the line they're making at the moment, I'm feeling like I might put some money on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue against it. And have Holcim PRB changed to their J0? It looks like they've deployed their J0. They'll be happy that they left it up, and they're going to be getting a big advantage having that sail now as we approach that next mark.
Biotherm in first, Team Holcim PRB in second place, but there is a battle here between third and fourth, with Team Milizia and 11th Hour Racing Team just trading positions from windward to leeward. The last time we checked in with these two, it was 11th Hour Racing Team to windward. Now the American flag boat is to leeward and pushing hard.
And hats off to them, because last time we saw them, they were dropping that J0 that they've managed to get back up in the air and deployed with the J2 as a stay sail. So, yeah, 11th Hour, they've been working really hard to get those gains, and yeah, well deserved.
And look at the difference in speed. 25 knots for the Americans to leeward and barely 12 for Team Milizia to windward. And I'm guessing here, what you can't see is the angle that we are shooting on here from the chase boat. Behind them is the shore. The further south, the further away from that shore you can get, the odds are that the breeze is more consistent, certainly, but perhaps stronger. So 11th Hour Racing Team have done well to find that chance to go down and get into the best breeze. But at the moment, still in the lead. Biotherm working their way really nicely towards Tabarca. Paul Mayer and the crew have put in a fantastic performance here in Alicante as leg one is getting underway. We knew that the IMOCAs were going to get some incredible speed. It didn't disappoint with over 30 knots by a couple of our teams here. But leg one and the race around the world has only just begun. 1,900 miles to go before Cabo Verde, and 5 points for the winner. Paul Mayer in the lead, but the question is, for how long? Oh, Sam, let's talk sail choices here, because Biotherm have been stuck with that J2 for a long time, but they're doing something different.
Yeah, I think that's the right choice there, hoisting their J0. Obviously, as you said, it looks like they're going to have to drive to get down to that mark, and you can see Holcim PRB just hooning in towards them, behind them. So they are defending that. They're deploying their J0 going into a downwind VMG mode to try and protect that lead.
They've got to do it fast because Team Holcim PRB are coming in here nearly double the speed at the moment. Team Holcim PRB overtaking Biotherm to windward. This import section, still some racing to be done here in Alicante. Leg one, rather fantastic. Well, this was the story of how leg one got underway here in Alicante. That strong start from Paul Mayer and Biotherm. That leeward position, always a bit of a gamble. It didn't go the way of Charlie Enright and 11th Hour Racing Team, but Paul Mayer on board Biotherm made it work. 11th Hour Racing Team were the last to round that first turning mark as we went onto that slower downwind section. But there were some enormous cartwheels and big problems for the teams as they tried to balance the power. And that was the moment for Guyot Environment Team Europe. That bad furl on the masthead Code Zero, meaning that they had to pull over and essentially press pause on the race. Biotherm providing plenty of spray, too much for our camera crew on the chase boat. But then when they made it out through the leaving gate, pushing their way all the way down to Tabarca of what has been so far an incredible performance from Paul Mayer. Well, the crowds here in Alicante have been enjoying an incredible performance from our teams. And Sam, we wanted the breeze, we wanted the speed, and we got it.
It's absolutely brilliant, and I'm so happy that we've seen these IMOCAs flying around the inshore part of this leg one start. It's just a great spectacle, I guess, as we say in French, to see that flying, doing wheelies, just showing the potential, the 35 knot boat speeds, manoeuvres, plenty of sail choices. It's just been absolutely crazy, and it's going to be like that for the next 5 days.
I think that's the thing that we keep having to remind ourselves here. We have just seen the start, the beginning, not only of leg one, but also of this race around the world. You're going to be able to keep up with all the action on the oceanrace.com website, as well as our live shows on Discovery Plus and Eurosport. We hope you've enjoyed the action in Alicante, and there's more to come.